Welcome to Digital Learning, an initiative of Directorate of Collegiate Education. In this session, this is aptly titled as the revision session, we will be summing up the poem The Worm by Nizim Ezekiel and also the language part of the poem Adverbs. So this session can be taken as a revision session for both. And the poem Worm is prescribed for second semester BA General English, Bengaluru North University. I am Nandana NG, Assistant Professor of English, GFGC, Bagepalli. The contents of the presentation. First and foremost, we'll have a recapitulation wherein we'll try to recollect whatever we have learnt in the previous session, and then analysis or trying to sum up or encapsulate the entire poem. Later, we'll also try to revise the grammatical concept called adverbs, and finally a small multiple choice question session to gauge the understanding of what knowledge we have accumulated through the course of this presentation. Recapitulation. The poem Worm, written by Nizim Ezekiel. Nizim Ezekiel is known as the father of post-independence Indian English verse. He is the one who started modernity in Indian English poetry. In the poem Worm, there is a conflict between nature and man, and by now we are familiar that nature is represented by the worm and man is represented here by the poet or the speaker. Here the man kills the worm and reports the fact. Further, he has more trust in the follies or mistakes of a common man than in the wisdom of the uncommon man. This point very clearly says that a man usually follows or has a person as his role model who has more flaws than another person who has less number of flaws. The speaker thus demonstrates a wish to escape society and understand himself and his own motives. The purpose of the poet. The poet expresses a wish to return to the animalistic. In fact, he wants or he expresses a desire to return to nature. The speaker demonstrates a wish to escape society and understand himself and his own motives. An integral part of the poet that can be seen in the poem is the concept of self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is an important theme throughout Nizim Ezekiel's poetry. Let us try to recollect the central idea of the poem. Ezekiel usually shows man and the objects of nature causing harm to each other. Likewise, in the poem The Worm, there is a conflict between nature and man. Here the man kills the worm and reports the fact, and he doesn't even have a bit of remorse there. We saw that at the end of the poem. Further, he, that is the poet or the speaker, has more trust in the follies of the common man than in the wisdom of the uncommon man. The poet persona gets inspired by the way of this tiny creature. This again is a crucial point. This is applicable to us also in our everyday lives. Though we are inspired by ordinary people, like how the man in the poem is inspired by the worm, yet we too do not accept that the other person is worthy to inspire us. But in the complexity of the modern world, the persona finds it difficult and follow that path. For example, Mahatma Gandhi has told us that non-violence is the way of world. We know for a fact that it is true, but still in this complex modern world, we accept it, but we find it difficult to follow that path. Ezekiel's The Worm is ruled by oppositions and paradoxes, beginning with the character of the speaker himself. The speaker, who wishes so badly to emulate, that is to surpass or match the worm, can do so only through anger and destruction, which is the opposite of the worm's own indifferent directness. Thus, even though the speaker believes himself to be similar to the worm at the end of the poem, he also reveals himself to be inherently different, as he is not free from outside influences, as the worm is in the line 11. Strategic as a worm and therefore free. Remember, nobody is completely free. We always have this inclination, we always have this innate desire of free or freedom. But what exactly constitutes freedom? Free as in, can you be really free of everything in the world? Can you be really free of all familial bonds? Can you be free of all the responsibilities? It sounds idyllic, but I guess it doesn't happen. The speaker and the worm are thus paradoxically both the same and different. Let us try to recapitulate the entire poem. that we have discussed in the previous sessions. The central idea of the poem can be summed up in these key points. It is ruled by oppositions and paradoxes. Man and objects of nature cause harm to each other. In the worm, there is a conflict between nature and man, and though inspired by the worm, he is unable to emulate it. And coming to the themes that are prevalent in the poem, these are the most dominating themes that can be seen. The first and foremost, the conflict or the God versus human supremacy, or in fact we can say how human or human beings are creation of God, but then ironically now we are trying to play the role of God. Later, the conflict or the opposing forces of creation and destruction. God created human beings and the worm. The human being has killed the worm. He has destructed another life. Likewise, the symbol of fear and self-doubt. When the man looks at the worm, he feels fearful. He is not scared of the worm, it's a small worm. He is scared of the fact that though the worm is smaller than him and is much less basic in anatomy, structure, etc., yet the worm is better than him in his way of attitude or behavior, and that leads to self-doubt. And finally, this is the most important theme, though not from the textual point, I feel on a personal note that self-knowledge and self-awareness are very, very crucial for our development, both mentally and the way we progress in our life. We should always be aware of what we are up to, or how we behave, if our behavior is hurting others, what are our flaws. Introspection is always necessary. Only self-awareness will help us rectify our faults. Coming to the grammar part, adverbs is a part of the language activity in the text, and so adverb is the language activity after the poem The Worm. To define adverb, adverb is a word which modifies the meaning of a verb, an adjective or another adverb, and is called as an adverb. The 8 kinds of adverbs are adverb of manner, quality, state, adverb of place, adverb of time, adverb of number or frequency, adverb of degree, relative adverb, interrogative adverb, adverb of certainty, affirmation or negation. We can even compare adverbs. Comparison of adverbs. The adverbs like adjectives have 3 degrees of comparisons. Adverbs with single syllable form their comparative and superlative by adding er or est. With this we saw in the previous session. Adverbs ending with li form their comparative and superlative by adding more and most. Now that we have summed up the worm and the language part, let us have a small multiple choice session. First, the worm poem is composed by William Wordsworth, William Blake, Nazim Ezekiel or Eliot, and the answer is option C, Nazim Ezekiel. What does mock mean? The options are cry, think, bend, to make fun of, and the answer is option D, to make fun of. The poem Worm consists of dash lines. How many lines are there in the poem? By now you should be very familiar with the number of lines in the poem. In fact, the entire poem is in the form of a single stanza which consists of how many lines? The answers provided are option A 30, option B 20, option C 10, option D 5, and the answer is option B 20. The worm poem consists of 20 lines. Where was the worm crawling to? In the very beginning of the poem, there is a mention of the poem crawling towards. And where is the worm crawling to? Option A, towards the speaker. Option B, to a drier place. Option C, inside the house. Or option D, none of the above. If you recollect properly, then the worm was crawling to a drier place. It had just stopped raining and the worm was in search of a drier place. So the answer is the worm was crawling to a drier place. A word which modifies the meaning of a verb, an adjective or another verb, adverb is. The options are verb, adverb, adjective or noun. So what is the answer here? Remember, noun is the name of a place, animal or thing. Verb is the action of the noun and adverb is How is the verb happening? How is the action happening? So such a verb is known as adverb. So the answer here is adverb. Option B, adverb. References used for this presentation. Thank you.